My name is Danita. I am the curator here at the Conception Bay Museum, located on Water Street, Harbour Grace, Newfoundland, Canada. So we're going to tell you a little bit about this room that we're in, which talks about the Customs House originally, which is what this building was before. It was built in 1870. And here we have a picture of the historic district in Water Street in Harbour Grace. We have a military picture here, Newfoundland Regiment. Up here we have Newfoundland Highlanders. And here is an older picture of the museum taken at water level just up the road here. So all the goods coming in and out of this harbour would have to be checked in this building. And by customs officers, which were actually called tide waiters. And I think it was because the low tide, high tide, but I could be wrong on that. And then over here in the corner is the actual logbook of when it was a customs house. So they would keep track of the vessel's name and country and the good that they were bringing in. So for example, from Cuba in 1840, they would bring in coffee, molasses, and sugar. And here in both corners of this room is a mobile X-ray unit machine. And this building was a medical office for a number of years after it stopped being a customs house. And this machine was often used to test for tuberculosis, sadly. And oftentimes it would travel by boat to little outports that didn't really have road access. And they would test tuberculosis in those communities as well. And then in 1970, a board was formed when they wanted to establish a museum here. And Mackley was one of the driving forces belonging to that, along with his son Jerome and his wife Pamela. And the museum opened its doors a couple of years after, and we've been here ever since. And the last couple of years, we've really done a lot of community outreach. We have a lot of concerts on our grounds, which highlight youth performers and local performers. Right here is actually Colston's Cove Steers, which will take you right down to the beach at the end of our grounds. And this is a famous location because they say John Guy bartered with pirate Peter Easton to land salt on this beach. And we also have haunted hikes throughout the town. And they are probably one of our biggest fundraisers throughout the year. We usually have 2 a year, so we should have another one coming up now in October. I would love to invite you to our aviation room. It was recently remodeled 2 years ago. So up this way. So this is our newly remodeled aviation room, and we probably have the best view in the bay as well. And our aviation history starts with this plane, the Hamlin Page Atlantic, which was in a race across the Atlantic with the Vickers Vimy from St. John's. And whichever plane got there first would win 10,000 pounds. And unfortunately, this plane suffered mechanical problems. So the Vickers Vimy from St. John's won the contest. And this all happened in 1919. Here you can see the Hamlin Page Atlantic being built. And that's where the current soccer field is now, beyond St. Francis. And this is Water Street in Harbour Grace in 1919. And this is the Hamlin Page Atlantic on the test run. And then in 1927, a man by the name of Fred Keeler from Detroit, he wanted to build an airstrip so he could fly across the Atlantic on his plane, the Pride of Detroit. He met John Oak on a train ride. They had a little chat, and Oak said, "I know just the place for you to build an airstrip." And he took him up to Crow Hill. They formed a committee. They got some funding. And his plane was the first to land on our airstrip in 1927. And then, of course, we move into Amelia Earhart territory. So in 1928, Amelia was vying to become the first woman to cross the Atlantic. She was in Trepassey. Mabel Bold was in Harbour Grace at our airstrip. Both of them were here at the same time, both of them trying to be the first woman to cross the Atlantic, but they were listening to different weather forecasts. They told Amelia, the weather's fine, you can go ahead. They told Mabel, no, stand down, you can't leave. So then Amelia became the first woman to cross the Atlantic as a passenger, but she was not very pleased about that because she was just a passenger, and she referred to herself actually as a sack of potatoes. But then she returned to Harbour Grace on May 20th, 1932, and she went across the Atlantic on her solo flight. And she was scheduled to land in Paris, France, but she suffered a lot of mechanical problems, a lot of fog, a lot of ice on her wings. So 14 hours later, she landed in Culmore, Ireland, in a cow pasture, and became the first woman to travel across the Atlantic solo. So this is her plane, Lockheed Vega, being fueled at our airstrip, and I think this is a fantastic photo, especially to see all these men and this one lone female in the background. And then in 1930, we had Boyd and Connor, who became the first Canadians to cross the Atlantic. They carried the first airmail, and they actually would draw black lines on the edge of their wings so they could keep track if ice was forming on their wings. And they actually ditched the radio, and the pilot would tie a string on his wrist, the navigator would sit behind him, and the navigator would pull on the string according to which way he wanted him to turn. So they were very, very interesting characters indeed. That's Boyd and Connor. And then out here is the actual logbook from the airstrip. It's open to the Amelia Earhart page. And right here you can see Amelia's signature. And the details of her flight are up here. And this is actually her plane. That's her Lockheed Vega, which she calls her Little Red Bus. And I'll tell you about some local heroes. Lamont Lyle Parsons. He was a fighter squadron pilot. This is him right here. He flew out of Torbay, and he was known to be a bit of a daredevil. And this is actually him in one of the famous paintings flying through the spires of the church just down here. And you can see his signature. It's called Till I Return. And the artist Ian Sparks' signature as well. And Claude Stevenson was very important to the success of the airstrip, and one of the main reasons it still exists today. He was a volunteer for countless decades there. So our airstrip is still, anyone can go in there and see it, and can actually walk on the ground and on the field where the likes of Amelia Earhart and Mabel Bold did in 1928-32. And many of these planes, well, all of these planes and many more, landed on our airstrip for different reasons, whether it's political or records or you name it. So that's a little tour of our aviation room. I hope you enjoyed it, and we hope maybe you'll visit us and learn more. Thanks.